Okay, y'all, so tomorrow is the day. 28 years later will officially be out, and I wanted to make one last video talking about some recent interviews I just read, more theories, and all of that for the movie. By the way, there were spoilers floating all throughout my recent videos, so if you don't want spoilers and want to go into the movie going fresh without knowing anything, my best advice to you is don't go down into the comments, and I really do tell you, do not go down there because there are a ton of spoilers out already. But nonetheless, let's get into the movie and what exactly is coming. So this week we did a video on Dr. Ian Kelson, who is the character that Ralph Fiennes is playing. We also talked about the Alpha, who is being played by Chi Lewis Perry, as well as a video yesterday where we just discussed Sir Jimmy Crystal, the quote-unquote cult leader that Jack O'Connell is playing. Here we're going to talk about everything that I feel like is going to be happening in this movie. Tomorrow we will watch the movie and then we will do a review and we will do an ending explained, and then on Friday we will have a theory video for the Bone Temple. It's a 28 years week, like I said before, and we are super hyped. So we've been discussing this movie ever since the first teaser came out, and we've been on the train ever since. So let's get into this movie and what exactly is happening here. One of the things that we've heard about the film is that it is, of course, taking place 28 years later. Now, one of the questions that everybody had on their mind is, we did have 28 Days Later, which is Alex Garland and Danny Boyle working together on that one. Now, they didn't work together on the 28 Weeks Later film. That was actually another filmmaker and writer. So the question was, is that film canon? And it's been a thing that's been discussed over and over by many online, because there are certain things in that movie that kind of divert from what we heard in 28 Days Later, right? So Danny Boyle has come out to say, as well as Alex Garland, that yes, indeed, 28 Weeks Later is soft canon in a way, because yes, the virus did make it out of the UK, made it all the way to Paris, but according to Boyle and Garland, it was sort of like stopped and then pushed back. So the virus didn't make it onto Europe, and it didn't go worldwide. So it is just the UK in 28 years later that is going through this. It is very much so a British story, as Boyle says. So that's the thing right there. Now, when speaking about immunity and things like that, he doesn't go and dive into that and says he'll keep it at bay right there. So I thought that was interesting that Boyle and Garland have finally decided to say, you know what, yes indeed, 28 Weeks Later is canon. But nonetheless, we do now know that the virus did try to make it out, but now it's back in the UK. And like I've talked about in videos before, NATO is currently keeping the virus in the UK and not letting it come out. We see it in the Rage Leaks website, and I talked about that already. You can see this picture right here where they showcase that they're trying to keep the UK in a perimeter of sorts so the virus doesn't escape. Now, what we have to talk about is as well that there is indeed a whole thing going on with the infected in this movie. First and foremost, this movie is looking to be revolving around Spike as well as Jamie and Isla, a family that lives in this community that is separated from the mainland with this like small sliver of land that is covered up by the shore at times, so they're able to keep the infected and all of that out of there. Now, it seems that Jamie will take Spike out in this movie in order to teach him about the land and all of that. And Danny Boyle has also talked about the reason they have to also go out into the mainland is because they need to refuel. So they need to get woods, they need to get resources that are out in the mainland that they just can't have in the commune at all times. So that's why they pretty much go out there. Now, I watched a scene after watching 28 Days Later in which they showcase that Spike is learning from his father Jamie about the importance of being able to sort of protect those around you and also being willing to kill. And in that scene, we saw that Jamie and Spike came across a man who was hung upside down with a bag over his head, seemingly infected with the words Jimmy etched on them. And they were seemingly collecting the blood in this bag. And so in my cult theory video I talked about yesterday, I had a feeling that maybe Jimmy, who is played by Jack O'Connell, is running a cult, a sort of group that is trying to create chaos. And one of those ways that they are going to create chaos is by collecting this blood, weaponizing it to make others infected with the rage virus. And so that's what we possibly could be seeing there. I said, I believe that these people feel disenfranchised with how the world has treated them and how they're being sort of pushed to the side and just being there waiting for their demise to happen is what the world's doing. And I think these people are sick of it and sort of something snaps in them and they want to bring the virus worldwide. That's what I think the Jimmy Gang is trying to do. Now, Another thing that we have to discuss is a set of characters that aren't really being discussed as much either, and that is the NATO soldiers that we will see in the film. They were in the teaser at the beginning. They go up against the Alpha. Don't know exactly why they came to the land in the first place. Maybe there was some accident or something and they've crash landed or whatnot, but there is a reason they're here too as well. So I'm very curious about what that's going to be. And these are NATO soldiers that know that the rest of the world is okay and there's no virus. I'm curious to know if the people in the UK in this little community know that there is no virus outside of their world and that the rest of the world is just going about like normal and the UK is just left to like burn basically, right? So that's going to be something that's going to be an interesting story here. Now, the other part of the story as well, so we've already discussed Jamie and Spike going out into the mainland. We've discussed the Jimmy cult as well. We've discussed the NATO soldiers. So there's 3 stories already going, right? And then the last one as well is going to be Isla, who is played by Jodie Comer, who is the mother of Spike, going out with Spike and Dr. Ian Kelson in some of these scenes we see here. So Ian Kelson is a doctor played by Ralph Fiennes, and according to him, back when Conclave first came out, he is a doctor who holds secrets to something that could help Isla. And so Spike brings her to him in order to save her for whatever the case may be. So in some descriptions for Isla, they say she is suffering from memory loss. We also do learn from Danny Boyle and Isla that she will have a moment of rage just as Cillian Murphy did. And I thought that was interesting for Danny Boyle to speak about that as well. And I'm also going to talk more about the mutated and the alpha in a bit. Just give me a sec right here. But I think that Dr. Ian Kelson has discovered some secret of sorts in order to be able to sort of thrive into the mainland and even maybe live in sort of coexistence with the infected in some capacity, which we'll talk about in a bit, because in one of the little teasers that they showcase in this TV spot that Dr. Ian Kelson and the Alpha actually come face to face, and it seems to be sort of cordial of sorts from what I can see in here. And some people in my comments for my previous video on Dr. Ian Kelson and the Alpha have talked about how Dr. Ian Kelson sort of has this blood, this dry like thing on his like skin at all times, and maybe that's something that helps him conceal in a way with the infected. Now they've talked about also how Dr. Ian Kelson may feel compassion as well for these like infected, because in his eyes he is a doctor, they're just infected. And this is Garland talking about sort of the mutations of sorts that have happened now. So when Garland spoke to Bloody Disgusting, he actually said this: I think it was the product of conversation. When speaking about evolving the infected in 28 Days Later, he says, I think it was the product of conversation, and essentially it went like this: if infected are still around, how are they still around? And actually what happens is things just get enforced by that. They're not really inventions, they're just logical progressions. The infected are not supernatural, they're not reanimated dead people, they're actually just people who are sick, but that's all they are. So they need to eat, they need to drink. If they're going to eat, how are they going to eat? If it's protein, they're going to hunt. Then you look at the animal kingdom and you see the way, say, dogs or wolves can hunt in packs, or various kinds of essentially pack-like animals, which humans absolutely are. So they hunt in packs, and then you get alphas, which traditionally come out of a pack, some kind of dominant figure within it. But then also, would all humans do that? Well, maybe not. Some of them might not be very suited to hunting in a pack. There are other forms of protein. You can get it through earthworms or beetles that actually can provide quite a lot of proteins and nutrients and so on. They would move more slowly. And so, ending on that quote right there, we did talk about in my previous videos about Danny Boyle saying there are slow-lows in this world now, which are zombies that live sort of in the mud and under. And we've seen that already in the trailer, I believe, as you can see in this snippet right here. Now, Garland continues on to saying, then after that, the question of sex arrives. In a way, how human are they or how animal are they? Which is the same thing in some respects. To throw that into relief, you have a character played by Ralph Fiennes who is clearly not really distinguishing between infected and non-infected people. He's seeing them as a compassionate, rational doctor would see them, where you don't really divide sick people and non-sick people. They're just people in different states, and they need to be memorialized or thought about or cared about in the same way. But really, all of those branches come back to the same thing, which is the infected are not supernatural, and if they're still alive, how are they still alive? And so we get this sort of feeling that maybe in this movie, Boyle and Garland will sort of try to ask the question of who exactly is still human and what still separates what humans and the infected do, right? So I think that's an interesting conversation that I think Boyle and Garland are going to be having with this movie right here. Pretty much what I'm seeing here happening with the infected is that they are sort of starting their own commune, and maybe they are trying to sort of live now as the infected, as a pack of sorts as well, their own community. And I think that's something that we're going to see explored here. So with all of that being said, we have Isla and also Spike and also Jamie, who live in this community that is separated from the mainland, now sort of getting hit in the face with everything happening in the mainland. We have the Jimmy cult as well, who are trying to create some chaos of sorts, in my opinion. We have Dr. Ian Kelson, who has been sort of studying everything that's happened here, and I believe he is the one behind the Bone Temple. This Bone Temple could probably be some of the infected, some of the people, and he's just studying everything that's happening here and sort of trying to find a way for coexistence of sorts. We have the Alpha, who is played by Chi Lewis Perry, who may be just trying to protect his own kind and trying to keep everything else at bay and trying to sort of just be like on their own. But of course, when they come to the mainland, they feel threatened by these humans here and they're trying to just push them back of sorts. And that's something we've discussed already. Are the infected sort of sentient beings now that are able to sort of process and try to form community, maybe even have offsprings as well? And this leads to a whole different type of human being born and sort of like evolving now with the world that's here, because of course this virus will continue on, but what does it do after so many years, right? Are these same type of affected acting as they were in the Killian movie with 28 Days Later and now 28 years later? Are they still the same kind of infected, or has this virus sort of evolved in order to survive and be able to go forth? Maybe there's more logical thinking of sorts happening with them where they try to be a bit more like, hey, I need to survive and not get killed, so I need to do things a little bit different, right? So I think that's where we're going to be seeing in 28 years later. But I think deep down at the end of the day, the true villain truly will be Jack O'Connell's Jimmy and the Jimmy cult here, because I think that they are trying to create some sort of chaos and sort of rule over the land in order for them to come up and maybe, just maybe, go out and venture into the rest of the world in some capacity. And as well as the NATO soldiers who are thrown here for some reason, which I don't know just yet, but I think it could be an accident of sorts that leads them to the mainland now, and now they see the horrors that are happening and that they are keeping all of these people that are non-infected contained with the infected, just causing a ton of horror throughout. And I think we could see some of them just start to feel guilty about it. So overall, we don't know much more besides that. Those are just some of the things we've learned from some of these new interviews and these new snippets from the movie. We will be watching it tomorrow. We will be discussing it in a review as well as spoiler talk. So if you want to get into all of that, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. On the road to 50,000 subscribers, let's get to it. And make sure you follow us wherever else you can, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, or on TikTok. Check it out all at the end. But I'll see all of you tomorrow. Stay safe, stay positive.